I would say half the athletes that we cover that are 7, 18, 19 are actually bigger than most professional athletes. One of our hallmarks is the level of engagement we get, how many, comments, likes, shares, tens and tens of millions. We're the most engaged property in sports.
You have a partnership with the NFL, with the Olympics, and then more recently with the ATP Tour and WSL. I'm curious, what is the value prop? Is that part of a broader strategy for you to expand into other sports?
When I am on an airplane or in an airport or in a new town, if I wear overtime or talk to someone, the first thing every young person asks me is, do you know Eli Ellis?
Hello and welcome to the Sports Pundit Podcast, the show exclusively for the people shaping the future of sport. Driven by my curiosity working within the industry, I started this show to host conversations with decision makers from the MLB to the ICC, unpacking their strategies and industry shaping ideas. On today's conversation, I'm joined by the CEO of Overtime, Dan Porter, formerly head of digital at WME, CEO of OMGPOP, and the creator of the mobile game Draw Something. Dan founded Overtime in 2016, now a digital sports media company geared towards Gen Z sports fans and operating a series of professional sports leagues. It began focusing on posting short-form content of high school athletes, captured and shared to social media. This social-first identity carries through across all of the company's endeavors to this day. So I'm delighted to have Dan on to discuss the company's evolution from media platform to league operator, their recently announced partnerships with the ATP Tour and NWSL, and how they're navigating the evolving social media landscape. So without further ado, it's an absolute pleasure to welcome you, Dan, to the Sports Pundit Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, where I like to start all of the conversations is around the individual's journey. And I think that's especially important when it's a founder, because I think companies are often kind of shaped in the image to some degree of their founders. And so I think it would be helpful just to give a little bit of background of what you were up to prior to starting Overtime in 2016.
Sure. So I think about kind of my journey up until Overtime in kind of like one third. First third of my career, I was a public school teacher in the United States. I taught high school in Brooklyn, and I worked in nonprofit education for almost 10 years. So worked a lot with young people. Kind of second third, I end up starting and selling two companies. I started the first online ticketing company, which I sold to Ticketmaster. And I was a CEO of a games company, which I sold for $200 million to a large public company. And then right before this, I was the head of digital at Endeavor, at William Morris Endeavor, where I built the first digital talent agency, basically signing creators and so forth in 2013, 2016. And via working with a lot of sports leagues, that's where I got the idea for Overtime.
And in terms of a common thread across all of them, I guess one area would be kind of understanding a youth audience. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I mean, a common thread outside of lack of focus and itchy trigger finger, probably, building consumer facing entities, whether they're games or otherwise. I'd say number two, brand. I worked for Richard Branson for 3 years in that whole stint. And from working in music and concerts and everything else like that, just really a clear sense of brand. And then third, like you said, I'd say understanding next generation audience as they're crossed over with technology, whether that's in mobile games, whether that's working with YouTubers or anything else like that. So you have the kind of whole cycle there of essentially consumer products that then have really strong brands that then are geared for kind of a next generation consumer who interacts with them across digital platforms.
Yeah, and I guess the Draw Something example in particular is a really good example of kind of identifying social proof and then just going all in.
So the background of that is in 2012, I made a game, or the company I worked with made the game. I was the game designer. That was the number one game in the world every single day for 6 straight months and was downloaded 1 billion times. And that was really a market opportunity as well. At that time, most games were single player. People treated the phone like it was a Game Boy. And I think we just had this vision that the phone is a connected device and you can basically play games where you go back and forth with people. You can use your finger as opposed to a joystick. So it was a creative endeavor based on a game that we had made and refined multiple times, but it was opportunistic in the sense that it said, what's the landscape look like and where it's going? And even if you jump to where that is in sports for what I do now, It's kind of like, where's sports? Where's it consumed by one audience? How does the next audience look for it, and kind of what's missing?
Yeah. So then I guess before we get into kind of how you're applying these kind of past experiences with your current endeavor at overtime, I guess it would just be worth giving people a little bit of an explanation as to what overtime is, because I think 80% of your audience roughly is under the age of 35. So for anyone over that age or that isn't familiar, a brief description might be helpful.
Sure. So to all my non-customers who will never watch, and I'll never have a transactional relationship with you that drives revenue, I'll explain. Um, so basically, overtime is at the core a massive kind of distributed digital media sports entity. What does that really mean? It's ESPN, Sky Sports. It's whatever those things are that you grew up with in the 90s or 2000s that were kind of the home of sports. That's us. We just happen to be digital in nature. We're distributed across a lot of different platforms. And our content tends to be less kind of who's in the standings and how much was their buyout or was their trade for, or less breaking news, and more just the intersection of sports culture and specifically around the athletes. That kind of business where we started, especially identifying around the kind of younger next up athlete, because that's who our audience identifies with, is 100+ million followers and billions of views every month. On top of that, we have two other businesses. One is we own and operate a live events business. So we have 3 different sports leagues across basketball, men's and women's, and football, and a small footprint in boxing as well. And we put on over 75 live events a year. And those are leagues we created, we own, we distribute. Some are on the NFL Network, some are on Amazon Prime. And that's the next generation version of the NFL or the NBA. And on the other side of business, we partner with all those folks. So we're an NFL partner, we're an Olympics partner, we're a partner of the ATP, the NWSL, which is a women's soccer league in the United States. And just like we use our kind of media platform and our audience smarts to blow up our own IP in our own leagues, we also do that in partnership with other leagues.
Yeah, we're going to get onto those partnerships, particularly the two more recently announced ones with the ATP and NWSL a little bit later. But I guess just to start off, I'm curious of the journey that took you from social media publisher or social media platform, kind of amplifying high school athletes before they become professional stars, and moving into live events and becoming a league operator with initially OTE.
Yeah. So I think at the core of that, there's a lot of things that people assume. Like you assume that we cover high school athletes before they're professional stars. I would say half the athletes that we cover that are 7, 18, 19 are actually bigger than most professional athletes. They have more followers and they have more audience. And so a lot of it is, all your assumptions are based on the fact that the only thing that matters is professional sports, and we're just a little cog on the pathway to become professional athletes. And I think we took the point of view that these athletes are superstars right now. They're massive, they're important. Their importance doesn't rely on where they go in the future, it's what they do presently. And that's kind of somewhat of a disruptive approach. But the fact is, that's why tens of millions of young people all over the world kind of watch and consume, because there's the quote unquote value of these athletes as they're valued by grown-ups. You know, what team are they going to play on in the future, their salary, everything else like that. And there's the value of these athletes as they are seen by the young people who follow them right now, which is everything they do right now, how they impact culture. Some of the biggest memes and other things come out of these athletes. Most of these athletes have more followers than the vast majority of professional athletes. And this isn't an anti-professional sports thing. I'm an NBA fan, an NFL fan, a Premier League fan. Those are like A+ leagues run by incredibly talented and smart people. I'm just saying that there's also a space where young people see the value of young people. And by the way, that happens in other fields. If you are 17 and you're a rapper, you're a movie star, nobody talks about how later on when you do X, Y, and Z, you're going to be valuable. If you're a giant YouTuber, no one talks about, well, you're not really relevant until you go and you make a movie or you do a television show. What you do now is relevant. And that aspect of it is super powerful. Never set out to be a publisher, wanted to build a massive brand and a massive community of like-minded young people who just wanted to be in a place where what they did right now was valid. And it's just not the way that grown-ups, so to speak, or traditional people see the world. Once we were successful in that and we built a massive brand and a massive community, I think one of our hallmarks is the level of engagement we get, how many, comments, likes, shares, tens and tens of millions. We're the most engaged property in sports. When we stream a live game, we can get up to 6 comments a second, 100, 200,000 comments during a live event that we will moderate and engage with. And so when we had this massive community, we're like, what can we do with this community? We can partner with advertisers who want to reach them, but we can also create our own IP on top of that. And I think what you see broadly in the kind of creator economy of which we're part of is people who use media to create a massive audience, but then decide that they want to monetize that themselves. The most obvious example is Mr. Beast, right? He makes way more money from Feastables chocolate than he does from his media platform, but Feastables wouldn't exist if he didn't have this huge media platform. And you see it across makeup, with Hailey Bieber and with Selena Gomez. You see it across Prime, which is, Logan Paul and KSI. And for us, we make 2 products. One is we have an apparel business that's tens of millions of dollars where people wear over time, which signifies that you care about who you are at that moment. And that's the brand for high school athletes. And the second business is IP, sports leagues, where we own kind of IP in our unique thing. And we work with both broadcasters as well as ourselves to build that in a business that's the same as any professional sports league.
So in terms of the way that you kind of see the OTE proposition, it wouldn't be fair to say that you kind of pitch yourself as an alternative route to the pro leagues for high school athletes. Your argument would be that you are a platform for athletes right now.
That's exactly what I would say. Other people might say that because they don't understand how big it is, or they don't value young people. They only value the end goal. But there's no business. I'm not a training academy. I'm not in business to train people to go play somewhere else. I'm a sports media and entertainment business, and I think there's a massive opportunity. Now, I have a handshake agreement with the athletes that say, if you come and play in our league right now, you're going to get a lot better. I'm going to invest in your skills. The average athlete who plays in our league can gain 10 to 20 pounds of muscle. When you go and you do other things in the future, you're going to be in the best possible way. But what matters is what happens right now. I mean, there were hundreds of thousands of people from over 100 countries around the world who watched our last final. It's as big as professional sports in a lot of places. But I think for a traditional 40, 50, 60-year-old who's grown up, who's told there's only one thing important, they see it as the pathway. The same way that all of those people say, well, if you're on TV, you're somebody, but if you're on YouTube, you're not. But if you go to somebody who's 17 years old, they can't name a single person on TV, but they know who all the biggest YouTubers are. So I just think it's a generational and a mindset shift. And the longer that kind of traditional thinkers and older people are wedded to the older model, the wider lane we have just to, hoover up audience and to be successful, because they don't truly understand what's at the core of what we're doing.
Yeah. Would you say that because of NIL, there is now increased competition for that younger audience, because colleges are also trying to create platforms for young people?
No, I would say there's not. So NIL is name, image, likeness. NIL is a tool for college sports teams to effectively recruit. College sports teams are not media entities. Their goal in the basketball landscape is to be in March Madness and to win money and make the alumni happy. And their goal in the college football playoff is the same. NIL is a tool for which they're able to attract the most talented players through kind of a monetary relationship. For us at our level, what's powerful about NIL is that we've been out there saying, like, listen, these athletes matter. One of the first athletes to ever blow up on our platform was Mac McClung. He's won 3 dunk contests in the NBA All-Star, but most young people in America know him because they saw him in overtime because we filmed him in a 11th grade gym dunking on his friend and it completely blew up. At that time, there was no structure for us to have a financial relationship with Mac McClung. So we went to his hometown, we told his story, we posted him on the account, we did all kinds of stuff like that, but he couldn't make any money from that because of the eligibility issues. Now that's completely different. So if we work with a Paige Beckers at the college level or an Ian Jackson in high school, or he plays at UNC now, we're able to have a structured financial relationship with them that benefits them, but also benefits us. But the way that we take advantage of that is significantly different than how college does, because we're
Yeah.
trying to create media with them. A lot of times, if you shop our apparel, you see all the same athletes as models for that apparel. College is, again, about recruiting the best talent to try to either win March Madness or the college football playoffs.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess to kind of emphasize your point around being a brand building tool for athletes, I think Eli Ellis is a good example that we haven't spoke about yet. I think I'm right in saying that you've spoken about him potentially being a future CEO of Overtime. So,
Absolutely. So Eli Ellis is a, roughly 6 foot, not exceptionally athletic, meaning he doesn't jump that high or run that fast, um, basketball player who is in 12th grade. The flip side of it is he's probably one of the most competitive individuals I've ever met. He is an exceptionally skilled shooter. He drives, he can score at will. He's an incredible player, but it's unclear whether he's going to go to the NBA or his ceiling is in college or whichever. And that to me is immaterial. Time will tell. But in ninth grade, we went to Eli's house, and for 2 years, we filmed a show with him and his brother and his dad, who was the coach. And then in 10th grade, he came and he started to play in our league. And in 11th and 12th grade, he had his own team in our league. And he's probably the most popular, if not one of the most popular players. He has millions of followers. When I am on an airplane or in an airport or in a new town, if I wear overtime or talk to someone, the first thing every young person asks me is, do you know Eli Ellis? In a certain thing, there could be brands that say, well, is Eli Ellis the next LeBron? If he's not, then we're not interested. And there are brands that understand that his influence on young people and his power as a superstar in their eyes is unstoppable, means that they're able to really tap into that. And Eli Ellis is a star right now. It's not about what happens next year, or it's not about what happens in the future. He's a star right now. I say as an aside, he could be a future CEO because he's also really smart. He's locked in. He's looking at building his brand. He's looking at, how do I work with overtime? How do I text Dan Porter and ask him what this type of business thing is like? He's kind of a unicorn in that sense, because he sees the world around basketball and he also sees the bigger opportunity. But I think that anybody who is able to use their skills on camera on the court to amass a big following can realize that there's a huge amount of opportunities beyond that. I mean, I think it's, common knowledge that most NBA players make more money off the court than they make on the court. Sneaker deals, endorsement, productions, all kinds of stuff like that. Being able to be highlighted when you're 17 and also amass a huge social following is hugely impactful in your ability to execute on that.
yeah, for sure. I mean, like at a very, very small scale, I started a newsletter while I was working in my first job in sports. And then that opened up a whole host of audience that I wouldn't have otherwise had access to. And that network then unlocks new job opportunities and everything else that comes with it. So completely get it from that perspective.
Absolutely. Listen, I would say that a lot of people apply to jobs. The most successful people go out and do things on their own and end up, getting a job because of that. I've hired people who have driven 6 hours to come to a conference and tried to meet me and other things like that. I've hired people. A lot of people come up to me and say, I want to work in social media. I want to do X, Y, and Z. And I was like, well, I haven't seen you on my TikTok feed. I haven't seen anything you made. Like, don't tell me you want to do something. Show me what you're doing now. It's democratized. You have a phone, you have a camera, you have a computer. There's a million things that you can do to go out there and create your own journey. And I think that's true for the most successful athletes as well.
Yeah. And in terms of creating that IP, whether it's OTE, whether it's the other sports that you've since evolved into, you mentioned like traditional revenue streams. How does that break down? Obviously, apparel is a key one for you guys on the merch side. You've done some really cool partnerships there, so we can talk about those. But I mean, traditional sports are very broadcast heavy in terms of where they get their revenue from. And I would assume, and I could be wrong here, which is why I'm asking, is you probably don't skew quite so reliant on the broadcast rights because you're also streaming everything to social platforms and getting that broad reach.
Yeah, it's a small piece of our revenue right now, but we made the decision that we wanted to reach with, probably two-thirds of our games, as many people as we could to build up our property, so to speak. But on a revenue side, yeah, apparel is a massive opportunity for us. It's tens of millions of dollars. I mean, I feel like merch is like you have a t-shirt. We have over 3,000 SKUs of different products that we do, mostly built around our brand, a mix between lifestyle and performance that we target every single high school athlete in America with. And then on top of that, you basically have sponsors or brand partners who want to reach our audience via sports. And that's not really possible on traditional linear broadcast. The average age of the person who watches a live sports event in the United States on television is at a high in the 60s and at a low in the 40s. If you want to reach somebody who's 22 years old, who's going to buy their first card, get their first credit card, has purchasing decision, has influence, even, if they're 17 or 18 and they have influence on their family, you're not going to reach them on a traditional sports broadcast. And I always say to people, go watch live sports on television and tell me how many of those ads are pharmaceuticals and life insurance and all these things that are really not relevant to a younger audience. So, at the most simplified form, we create unbelievably compelling and dynamic sports and entertainment IP. And then that becomes a platform where brands can reach a younger audience.
And in terms of trying to stay on top of what resonates with a young audience, how do you go about that? I read one quote from you, which was basically, don't tell them what to do, just like let the people that
Yeah.
are 17, 18 operate the social media channels if that's who you're trying to reach.
Yeah, I'd say it's a couple things. Number one is like, again, I don't make the posts and I don't write the captions, and I'm not close to being young. I'm like two generations removed. But number one, you've got to know how to find and hire dynamic young people who can make the same type of content that they want to watch. And you've got to have a couple mantras for them. One of our core mantras is sports media is about talking to the fan. Overtime, it is about listening to the fan. Number two, you've got to make content for them that is highly differentiated. I feel like if I could watch something we made on someone else's platform, then we haven't done it right. And number three is a lot of innovation happens at the edge of the internet. And if you pay a lot of attention to what's happening in gaming and on kind of smaller channels that are coming up and so forth, and you tap into that, you can generate a lot of originality, a lot of partnership with folks like that. Everything that is popular now once started on the edge. The most dominant music form in America and potentially the world is hip hop. But 20 or 30 years ago, that was guys selling tapes and CDs out of their trunk, and it wasn't even played on the radio. And so if you can just figure out how to position yourself through people you work with to be on the edge of things that are new and interesting. I mean, the idea that 20 years ago people would sit around and watch people play video games live was probably laughable. And now that's one of the most dominant forms of content. And so I think for us, we just have to continue to do a good job of paying attention there and taking creative risks.
Yeah, and then in terms of your partnerships with other leagues, like we mentioned this a little bit earlier, you have a partnership with the NFL, with the Olympics, and then more recently with the ATP Tour and then WSL. I'm curious, like, what is the value prop? Like, why are they coming to you to partner? And then also, is that part of a broader strategy for you to expand into other sports? Because, for example, with the ATP, you've now launched a tennis channel. So is that like a strategy for you
Yes.
as a way of getting into a new sport?
It's definitely a strategy. If I'm going to be in a sport like tennis, I'd want to partner with the best, which is the ATP, to learn and to create value with them and to find opportunities with them as opposed to ever try to do something on my own. And they're a great partner. Why do those folks work with us? It's kind of two straightforward reasons. Number one is they want to reach our audience, right? Like, what is Overtime in a kind of purely rational business sense? It's an audience aggregation play where you've got this massive audience that no one else has. And so they want to reach our audience and they want to talk to them about their own sport. And the second is that all of their brand partners and their sponsors also want to reach our audience. And so if we can collaborate with them to find ways that those brand partners, whether they're through the Olympics or the ATP, can also get digital distribution in front of our audience, that's a win. So it's an audience play both for the sport and for the advertisers around the sport as well.
Which bit comes first from your perspective? Did you have an eye on wanting to work in tennis, or was there an approach from the ATP to say, hey, we want to work with you, and then that kind of inspires you to say, oh, we could do something in tennis?
Yeah, our first big deal was with the NFL, and then quickly with the Olympics around that. We had a lot of success around the Olympics, and we continue to be a partner with NBC around that. And I think once those things were active in the press and people were looking at that, I think that there was always a desire to work with us. We just didn't know what the right structure was. And through those partnerships, figuring out the right structure and building relationships and inviting people, every single one of those partners has met us. They've come to Atlanta. They've come to our arena. They've watched a game. They've seen what it is, and they've kind of touch and feel in that sense. And once that happened, it became a lot easier to imagine how we could work together.
Yeah, I guess the other area around this that I think is really interesting is with the NWSL, and I guess with women's sports more broadly, they're in a similar position in that they don't have the traditional TV revenue that maybe an NFL would have. And so they almost need to build a little bit more social first and from the ground up. So there's potentially even more learnings on that side.
Yeah, I mean, what they have is they have a vastly underserved audience who's been hungry for product but hasn't been able to find or see it. And as those leagues like the NWSL has become, or the WNBA, incredibly successful, they're just at the moment where this audience has always been there, and now they're empowered to be at a place to reach that audience. And if we're a part of that, that's hugely beneficial to us.
I wish we had more time to talk about this in more detail. Obviously, you've been pretty active on the women's side with the launch of OT Select. Which sports and where else are you maybe looking to grow?
There's a couple things that I'm looking at right now. One is to do more in basketball and football, but more around events and tournaments, creating some order out of the kind of generalized chaos. I think one of the powerful things about doing events and tournaments is you always have to be in the league business to create an incredible amount of IP. Clearly, the World Cup, March Madness, there are all kinds of examples all around the world, and we want to figure that out. And one of the first things that we will do in that might be, without saying anything specifically, in chess, actually. And we have a very unique concept. We have partnership with a number of grandmasters around the world, and we think there's a ripe opportunity given, kind of post-COVID, post-Queen's Gambit, young people's interest in chess, to do something that I think could be gigantic. And I say it also because I think people think that we're all about stick and ball sports, but we're about delivering young athletes to our young audience, and doing so with a digital flair.
Okay, cool. Well, I guess a strategic move into chess is an apt way to finish.
Absolutely. Strategic is almost like a pun in chess. Yes. So we're moving the king and the queen around right now, trying to figure out what we could do.
I'll have to check in with you, mate, later on.
That was good.
Cool. I'll let you go. I don't want you to be late.
Nice to talk to you.
Nice to talk to you too. Thanks for listening to the Sports Pundit podcast. I'll include more info about the guest and the topics covered in the show notes. And you can also find my LinkedIn profile if you'd like to connect and let me know what you thought. Visit sportspundit.co to find previous editions of the podcast, access the newsletter, and to sign up for our WhatsApp group and see upcoming social events in cities around the world. See you again soon.